Welcome to Pro Tool Reviews. What I have for you today is Metabo HPT's C3606 DPA plunge cut 6.5 inch track saw. This saw is packed with features and value, and I think it's something you're gonna wanna consider if you're in the market for a track saw. Let's dig in, take a closer look, and show you why this might be a top choice. So what's it come with? Well, it's a kit. And what you get is a case, you get a charger, a battery, and the tool. The clamps and your track are separate accessory items, but you're gonna wanna grab those as well if you're gonna set up to use this as a track saw. So in order to explain really why you want a track saw, let me set some of this aside, get a block of wood, and show you some of the features and things that make this an easy choice and simple to use, especially if you're new to this market. Let's set this up here so I have a way to demonstrate the plunge and the way the track works before we actually get into all of the things that this saw really does. Now, something that you need to know is that I am not a cabinet maker. I'm not a cabinet builder or a furniture maker at all. What I am and has been is a framer and carpenter, having owned a residential construction company for many years up in South Carolina. Learned the trade of using a circular saw. Well, this sort of takes it to a whole nother level. If you struggle with making straight cuts, if you do have to do some precision work once in a while, or even things as simple as cutting off the bottom of a door, say for instance you gotta get a higher undercut on a door, using a track saw is a very simple, easy solution. Also, ripping down large sheet goods. If you need to cut up a piece of plywood, a precision way to do that if you don't have a table saw handy is using a track saw system. So it really is a sort of fantastic solution for those types of scenarios. One thing that's really nice about this saw though is that it is cordless. So this saw, you don't have to worry about being in a shop or a workshop environment. You can use this out in the field very easily. Even in your workshop, you can use it plugged in because Metabo actually has an adapter that allows you to plug this into 120 volts as well. But I do like the battery option. So, track saw. Well, the basics are we have a track, right? We also have what we might call this a guide rail. And there is a rail on the back side of this track that interacts with this section right here. We line up our saw on that, and that allows us to move this along smoothly in a very straight line. So no deviations from that line. Now, there is some adjustments on this. So if I spin this around, turn this track around so you can see it, with the track saw on here, I have this ability to put tension or allow this to slide easier by a knob that's included in the base. And I'm gonna start it at the base and kind of work up through the saw to show you the different features and what the saw does. So this knob right here allows you to put tension on the saw as you pass over the track and also keeps it aligned so that you don't have a lot of play. The snugger it is, the more precise of a cut you're gonna make. So that would be the one thing to point out initially. What's cool about our track is that this leading edge on the track is sacrificial, meaning that when we first purchased this track, it's actually coming off a little bit of an 1/8 or 1/4 inch wider than what is here. And when I use the saw for the first time, it's gonna cut that back to where the actual very edge of my blade is. What's nice about that is in the future, we simply just have little pencil marks on my piece of wood that I'm gonna cut. All I have to do is line it up with the edge of my track, and I know I'm gonna have a precision cut when I line the edge of this up because that's where the edge of my blade is every time, because I'm only gonna use this saw on this piece of track. I'm not gonna share this track with other saws. That way, whatever that interaction is between the blade and this track edge, it's gonna match. The other nice thing is that these are all replaceable. So should you get a miscut or damage this track, you can replace this piece of rubber plastic along the edge with a new piece. It's sold as a separate item. That's your track. This actually follows a kind of an industry standard for track. So if you happen to have a piece of track from another manufacturer, we found that this saw worked on it just fine. So just a good side note with that. And also, being that we're talking about track for the moment, you got clamps. So the reason you want to use a clamp is simply this. If I'm going to put this piece of track on a piece of material and I am worried about it sliding around, and the track really doesn't slide around because it has some rubber grippers on the bottom of it. This track, usually when you set it down, if you notice, it stays put. But if you're concerned that it might move, there's actually a groove on the bottom of the track. Well, I can slip this in. I like these particular clamps because just with a single motion like this, I can lock it down to my workpiece and it's height adjustable. So I can go ahead and put this under my material, slide that up with a quick lock, and that's locked in place. And if I need to, I can actually add a piece of another clamp on the other end, slide that in, lock that into my material as well, and that track will not move. Disengaging that is really simple as well, and that's how those clamps work. For a lot of applications, I actually don't even use the clamps. If I'm cutting off the bottom of the doors, for example, and I need to add a little bit of an undercut under a door, I am simply just gonna lay my track on the end of that door at the gap that I need to cut off and just run my saw across it, because again, there is some rubber on the bottom of this that actually creates a little bit of friction with whatever surface you're putting it on. and makes it so the track stays put. All right, so there's the track, there's the base. Now as we move up through the saw, put that on there, there's some other things that have to do with where we're gonna be making our cut. And one of those is our bevel adjustment. So this actually will allow you to make bevel cuts. So right now it's set at a 90-degree cut, so I'm just doing a straight cut, but actually it'll go all the way from -1 to 46 degrees. So it's actually going more than 45 degrees. It's 1 degree extra on the top end and 1 degree extra on the lower end. And the reason for that is if you have to do a butt joint and you're doing some kind of cabinetry or something with some laminate maybe, you wanna make sure you get a really tight joint. If you back cut that, so the face side of that cut is flush with your other piece of material, you're gonna get a very tight joint, especially when you do it at -1 or at that 46 if you're doing a miter. But what's nice about this is it's articulating. So my bevel adjustment is simply this. There's a knob on the back side of the saw and a knob on the front side of the saw. And there is graduation here showing you which angle you're at. So there is a stop automatically at 0 and at 45. Should I need to want to go that 46 or that -1, that's simply pushing on the end of this button and you get that extra little bit of extra adjustment. Now, normally though, I'm just going to use our normal 0 and 45 stop. So once I get this adjusted to my bevel that I need, then go ahead and lock it in on this end and also on the back end. So that's simply turning these in, and you're gonna wanna lock in both sides. That way you know you have a really rigid mount as far as where the saw is gonna be locating and won't have any movement. So there's that. So the articulating part is this. If you notice, up in here I have machined steel pivot arms here. What that does is it keeps my blade in line with where my cut would be normally if I'm making a straight cut. So it's not going to be offset, because if you've been accustomed to using a standard circular saw, you'll notice that when you bevel cut, it changes your cut position when you align it on a line, on a cut line. And so with this saw, you don't have to worry about that, because as you bevel this up, as you move this, you can see here, that keeps that blade in line with where that cut line would be. So again, another level of precision. And what I really like about this is how smooth the action really was. There's no real movement on this. It just has a very smooth feel. And then whatever position I'm gonna walk it in, I'm just gonna use my bevel adjustment knobs here and lock that into that final position. Some other nice features about this saw that I observed as I was using it a little bit is how easy it is to plunge. This saw actually has a good depth of adjustment for its depth. And that is right here, very easy to see. So we have a scale right on the front of the saw. Now this scale right here interacts with this depth of adjustment. And I can simply move this up and down to that final depth. And it gives me a depth of up to 2 5/8 at 90 degrees and 1 3/4 at a 45. So if I'm doing full 90-degree cuts, full depth, I get a 2 5/8. It's gonna get you through any of your standard 2x type material and stacks of plywood or whatever other material you might be cutting. But my adjustment is simply right here. Now, once I lock it in, if I find that I need a more precise depth of adjustment, we have these at 16th inch increments. So I can actually go in, lock it into a position, and then click it up, and it actually has dedents in between. So as I pull up on this, I can actually pull up on it very gently and it'll do an intermediate stop as well. So I get a really fine-tuning depth of adjustment should I need that kind of precision. Now, as far as blade change goes, it is a little bit different than a standard circular saw, and there's a specific spot that you have to set the saw at in order to do a blade change. I don't have my battery in, so I'm gonna go ahead and demonstrate that here real quick. And what there is on the inside of the saw is a lock. And so as I move this to this position that's indicated here, it'll put it in the blade change position. So once I have it there, I lock this in place, and then I can actually put my blade down, lock it in place, and now I have access to my arbor nut right here. So I do have a captured hex wrench on this tool, where now I can come in here, loosen this, and it actually locks the blade in place as well so it can't spin. So I go ahead, loosen this nut, take it out, slide the blade out, slide a new blade in, put my nut back in place, and I'm ready to go. And then when I'm all done, I can go ahead and store my hex wrench back in the back of the tool, so it's always handy for next time. So that would be for your blade change. This does come with a 42 tooth finish blade. Should you need something different, you can always change it. It has a standard 5/8 inch arbor, 6.5 inch blade, so you can go ahead and customize this saw with whatever your favorite finish blade is. So once we're done with our blade change, we can unlock it, adjust it to whatever depth we're gonna be plunging to, and then we'd be ready to go. Now, as far as plunging goes, We're gonna set our depth, and in order to plunge the saw, we have a safety built in right here. And so we can't normally pull the trigger without activating the safety. And that simply is just pushing forward on this knob right here. So we push forward on this and it allows me to plunge that blade down, which you can see here. I have it set right now to 1.5 inches. So it's gonna plunge that blade down 1.5 inches into our material if we were actually cutting something. Now, if I do need a little bit more fine-tuned adjustment, I do have a thumb screw right here as well. So I can, again, fine-tune adjust my depth of cut. If I can't get it quite from the presets, I can adjust it here with this thumb wheel as well. So again, I got a lot of adjustability, a lot of customization that I could do with this saw. So the other thing to point out about this saw is that it is variable speed. So depending on the type of materials you're cutting, maybe you're cutting plastics or laminates or hardwoods, you can actually dial in the exact speed for the material you're cutting. So you can match your blade type, your number of teeth, your speed to your material. So you make sure that you dial in the saw for exactly the type of work you're doing. And that is simply just a speed wheel here at the back of the saw, right above where the battery would install. So one other item that's a nicety on here that I discovered as I was using this tool was the vacuum attachment. It fits anything from 1.25 inches up to 1 7/8, and it actually allows you to lock in position where this is rotating. So you can remove it completely, but my vacuum attachment allows me to lock it in at different locations so that the hose angle is always at an advantage, so it's not gonna be catching on the end of my material. As I'm trying to make a cut, I can position this wherever I need it so that the hose is out of the way. I think the best thing to do next would actually be to run this through a series of cuts, showing you how all these different features actually work together, and so you can kind of see and get a feel for if this is something that you might be interested in. All right, let's go give it a try. All right, so what I'm gonna do is go ahead and cut off the edge of this piece of subflooring. This is subflooring, so it's only about 3/4 inch thick, so I'm gonna go ahead and set my depth to 1 inch. That should be more than adequate to get through that material. And then I'm gonna go ahead and hook my vacuum up to it as well. Got dust collection available, so we're gonna utilize that. And it's nice, again, you can position this so that the hose locks in a place that's not gonna catch on my wood as I'm making my cut. This is a plunge cut saw, which means that I can push this down in the middle of my material and make my cut. In the case of this one though, I'm gonna go ahead and start my plunge right before I get into my material so that I can get a full cut all the way across the face. I have everything locked in place and I think we're ready to go. So here is a cut. So there's a nice cut, and that cut, as I said before, is flush with the edge of the rubber, the black rubber strip that's on the guide. That way I know that that rubber strip is the edge of my cut, and so as far as precision goes, it's right there on the edge, and now I have a perfectly straight line all the way across. I'll go ahead and make one more cut just to show it going through and making the cut here. So as I'm pushing this through, it actually slides very, very smoothly. As you can see here, there's not a whole lot of resistance. It slides very smoothly across the track, and this blade is definitely more than adequate for cutting. This material leaves a nice fine finish, and again, I would expect that it is a 42 tooth blade, but again, you can customize that blade to whatever type of material you're gonna be cutting. So one thing with track saws, unlike regular circular saws, you're not concerned with sight lines. And in this particular case, if you need to see what's going on, you can get a little bit of a window right here. This is adjustable depending on the height of what you're trying to cut. You get a little bit of an idea of what's going on as far as when you're making this cut. But in general, when we're talking about track saws, you're relying on the edge of the track to be your guide. And so you're not so worried about sight lines and seeing where that blade is cutting, because you're gonna know that the edge of that track is the edge of your cut. All right, for our next cut, what we're gonna do is go ahead and do a bevel cut. So I'm gonna go ahead and set the saw up to do a bevel cut. Let's see here, we're gonna move our bevel up to the 45. Lock in our rear bevel adjustment. Make sure we everything locked down tight. We don't want to let go of the saw because at this point all the weight is on the side of the saw and it would fall off the table. The other thing we want to do is change our depth of cut. I'll go up to 1.5 inches to make sure we get all the way through that 3/4 inch material. And let's go ahead and cut ourselves a new line here and turn my vacuum on and let's do a bevel. All right, so when we do bevel cuts, the edge of that guide is right against the edge of our material. And so now we have a nice 45-degree bevel cut. So now that I've had an opportunity to use this saw, make some cuts, there's a lot of things that I really like. One, it's easy to use. It's not very complicated, and if you're a novice at woodworking, this is gonna be something that you can get you into pro quality results pretty quickly. But the nice thing is it's not gonna put you there at a pro quality price. If you've been on the market for track saws, you're gonna know that these don't come inexpensive. But the good news is this guy comes in at $4.99 as a kit. So you're gonna get the saw, a battery, the box, and a charger for $4.99. The track is available for $99, and should you need an additional piece of track, you can get connectors to make your track even longer. The other good thing to like about Metabo is its warranty. You get a lifetime warranty on the tool, 2-year warranty on the battery, and 1-year warranty on the charger. In using this tool today, this comes in as a value leader. And when I compare it to other track saws that I've used in the past, this one gives all the performance, but not the price. I am curious. Leave me a comment below. Is this something that you would use in your shop? If you're a professional cabinet maker, furniture builder, is this something that you would consider? I'd love to know your thoughts. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, do that so you don't miss out on our next video. And as always, thanks for watching.